Hello again and welcome back to Bantam Battles. Robert Max here. This is log number 15. And in this episode we are going to do some opening moves on Pickett's Charge, published by White Dog Games in 2017. In the first look video I failed to mention that this game is designed for solitaire play, with the player taking control of the portions of the Army of Northern Virginia that took part in the attack on July 3rd, 1863, that is popularly known as Pickett's Charge, or some people call it Longstreet's Assault. And the game system AI controls... I have a loose counter here. The game system AI controls the Union forces, the Federals that are on Cemetery Ridge and Cemetery Hill. Now, before the game, I have the historical placement set up, and, you know, there is some debate on the accuracy of this, so you can change it a bit, but I just went by the counters. Their initial position has a red number on them for the Confederates and a blue number for the Federals. That corresponds to a hex. So I have those placed historically per the game map. There are 4 units on the Confederate side that do not take part in this historical scenario, which is the scenario we are going to play. And those are Thomas, McGowan, Posey, and Malone. Their brigades do not take part in the game unless a Union infantry unit moves adjacent to them. And we'll see if that happens. The AI controls Union movement, and that doesn't happen until turn 3. All of the Confederate divisions, or brigades rather, start with inactive counters placed on top, with the exception of Pickett's 3 brigades that are in his division, and that would be Armstead, Kemper, and Garnett. Of course, all of the artillery units for the Confederates are not inactive, and before we start the game, which has 8 turns, there is a 2-phase pre-game sequence that occurs, which is the Confederate pre-attack bombardment and the post-bombardment Confederate artillery effectiveness check. And the way that's conducted, each one of these artillery units will select a target. I'll roll 1 die, and on a 5 or a 6, the targeted unit is hit, and it takes a step down. So we'll start with that. And I'm just going to start here at the north and work my way south with all the artillery units. So, this first one here, my target is going to be this artillery on hex number 17. So we roll a die, and we roll a 4. That was ineffective. This one is going to also fire on that artillery. Roll the 4, once again ineffective. This one is going to roll on the... or target, I should say, the infantry unit in that same hex, a 6, and that was effective. And what happens there is this infantry unit reduces from a 5 to a 4, and you'll see what that strength number means when I get to the firing phase, which is part of the normal turn. Okay, so these 3 have fired. I'm going to have this artillery unit also fire on the infantry unit in that hex 17, and that is a miss with a 1. Down the line here, same thing. Actually, I'm going to take a shot at this infantry unit here on hex 3. That's a 6, so that was effective. So he's reduced by 1 step. Next is this artillery unit, also going to attack the infantry unit we just fired upon. That's a 6, and it's also effective. So what happens in this case, since there's only 2 steps on this counter, there are extra counters in the game that you can actually do 4 step reductions. So we'll find Harrow's counter here, and he's going to go from a 2 to a 1. And he was on hex 3, which is right there. So he's already been reduced down to a 1. Okay, and I have one more Confederate artillery to fire. We're going to fire on him again. and that was ineffective. Okay, so now the Confederate pre-attack bombardment is completed. Next, we check to see the post-bombardment Confederate artillery effectiveness check. So what this means, there's a historical note here. It says, after the pre-attack bombardment, many Confederate gun crews were exhausted. Some guns were out of ammunition, and there was confusion about which guns should advance with the infantry. So what we do for each artillery unit, we roll 1d6. On a 4 or a 5, you flip the artillery unit to its reduced strength side. If you roll a 6, you place an inactive marker on that artillery unit, and it won't be available for the rest of the game. So once again, we're just going to go north to south. That's a 5. So he's reduced by 1. And you'll see what I mean with this strength when we get to the actual firing phase. Next one, a 6. He's inactive. So he's not available for the rest of the game. And actually, I'm just going to take him off because I don't have that many inactive counters left. Next, artillery. He's okay. Next one down here. He's a 5. He reduces 1 step. From a 4 down to a 2. It's actually 2 steps in that case. Okay, the next one down the line is a 3. He's safe. Next. He's good. Next. He rolls a 4, so he reduces 1 step. From a 4 down to a 2. Once again, it's actually 2 steps. Next one, he's good. And the last one, he reduces 1. Or flips, I should say. Okay, so now that we've completed the pre-attack bombardment, with the pre-attack bombardment and the post-bombardment artillery effectiveness check for the Confederates, we start turn 1. And turn 1, each turn has 5 phases, which are the Confederate infantry activation, Confederate move, Union fire, and Confederate fire, which doesn't start till turn 2. Now, actually, the Union move also doesn't start till turn 3. So on turn 1 here, we're only going to have 3 phases that actually take place. And the first phase is to activate the Confederate units. And the way that is accomplished, you roll for every inactive Confederate unit. On a 4, 5, or a 6, they activate, which will allow them to move and fire. Now, as I mentioned earlier, these 4 infantry units are not in the historical scenario unless a Union infantry moves within 1 hex, or not within 1 hex, adjacent to one of these units. And at that point, they will activate. And actually, any unit that is inactive, if an enemy unit moves next to it, it activates automatically. You don't have to roll for that. So, ignoring these 4 here, we're going to attempt to activate all of these infantry units. And I'm once again just going to go north to south, starting right here. Need a 4, 5, or 6. That's no good. Next one down. That's no good. Next one, 5. He activates. So we remove the inactive marker. And that's Pettigrew's brigade. Next, we're going to do this one. Inactive. That one. Also inactive. That one. Once again, inactive. This isn't good. Okay, as I mentioned earlier, Pickett's 3 brigades are active at the beginning of the game. So we still have these 3 over here to attempt to activate. First one right here was a failure. Next one down the line, he activates. So we remove the inactive counter. And the last infantry unit here does not activate. Now, we will check that again next turn. But at the start here, as you can see, we don't have very many infantry units that can move. In this game, infantry has 2 movement points, artillery 1, and there are terrain effects for various terrains. So now that we completed the Confederate infantry activation, the next phase is to move the Confederate pieces, or infantry units, and artillery units that have been activated. Artillery can move 1, I may not have mentioned that, and infantry has 2 movement points. So I'm not going to move any of the artillery this turn, but I am going to move the infantry units that are active. Now, it takes 2 movement points to move through the woods, so he's just going to go here. And the stacking limit is 5 infantry units in this game. On clear terrain, the infantry can move 2. Move Armstead there. Garnett there. Kemper. And Perry will also move. And I'm just going to play this game pretty much historically. I'm going to head for the copse of trees up in this area here. That's what we're going to use as our guide point, and we'll see what happens. So those are all of the Confederate infantry units that can move on this first turn. The next phase is the Union move, but that doesn't occur until turn 3, so that's NA. And then finally it's Union fire. Now, the way that works is it's very similar to the Confederate bombardment. However, you just use this fire chart that is included in the game. And based on the range to target from 1 to 10 hexes, it'll determine whether or not it's a hit or not. So we're going to start with the Union forces, and actually I'm going to start with Hazlitt's guns. Now, Hazlitt's guns down here in the south, I guess that would be the southeast corner. Historically, this artillery unit was actually off the map of the game, but for, I guess, game ease, and so you don't forget about it, the game designers have placed it here, just, you know, so you remember that you do have Hazlitt's guns available. Now, as you can see from this chart, Hazlitt's guns are only effective 6 to 10 hexes away, and they will hit on a 4, 5, or 6. Now, the way that works is, as I mentioned earlier, there is a strength number on this counter. In the case of Hazlitt's guns, it's 2. What that means is you roll 2 die. You roll 1 die for every strength point that's on the counter, and all of the die that are 4, 5s, or 6s are successful hits. So I pick a target with Hazlitt's guns, and it's going to be Garnett right here. We'll check the range first. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. So Garnett is in range, and he's actually the only one in range of Hazlitt's guns right now. Well, no, I guess all these other guys are as well, because his range is 6 to 10. So we get to roll 2 die based on Hazlitt's strength points on his counter, and it's successful on a 4, 5, or 6. So one of them, and I should have rolled the blue die for this, but oh well. One of them is a 5, so that is 1 hit. So Garnett's counter flips, and he's reduced from a 5 to a 4. And I'm just going to work my way down the rest of the way like this. Now, infantry can only be the firing range for the infantry is 1 to 3 hexes, and depending on how far away, you know, the unit is, determines how many die you'll roll, or how many numbers on the die. For example, here I'm going to have really the only infantry unit that appears at this point to have a target is Stannard, his brigade, and he's going to fire on Garnett, who is 3 hexes away. So you would utilize the 2 to 3 target range, and it's only on a 6 a hit. Now, Stannard has a strength value of 3, so he will get to roll 3 die on Garnett. And they were all a miss, because he had to get a 6. So that was a miss. The rest of the infantry units are not in range of any of the Confederate infantry units. They haven't advanced within 3 hexes. So I still have artillery that can fire, and as you can see, the artillery's range is anywhere from 1 to 5 hexes, and depending on how far away determines what numbers on your die are successful hits. So I'm just going to, we've already done Hazlitt's guns. I'm just going to work my way down with the rest of these guns. I'm going to have this artillery unit, once again, fire on Garnett. And he is 4 hexes away. So he only gets to roll 1 die as well. He gets to roll 4 die based on his strength, but he only hits on a 6. I hope I'm not being too confusing on this. So we roll, and we get 1 6. So that causes Garnett to reduce. I have to replace his counter, so I got to look for Garnett's counter here. And where is it? Garnett. There he is. So he reduces to a 3. Now the next artillery unit is also going to fire on Garnett. 4 hexes away. Once again, only successful on a 6, but he has 3 strength points, so he gets to roll 3 die. And that's a miss. Moving down to the next artillery unit. That's a big one, and that has 5 strength points. Once again, firing on Garnett. He gets to roll all 5 die. And what do we get? Remember, we can only successful on a 6. That was a miss. Going to move down to the next one. I'm going to fire on Armstead on this time around. That's 4 strength points on artillery unit C. And boy, he got 2 hits there. Oh, wait a minute. I may not be able to do that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. He's too far away, so nope, can't fire on him either. And it doesn't look like this artillery unit A is going to be able to fire either. So that's the Union. That concludes the Union firing turn. And next up will be the Confederate firing turn, but that doesn't start till turn 2. So I'll advance the marker to turn 2. That concludes turn 1, so we advance the marker to turn 2 and go back through the phases again, which would start with the Confederate infantry activation, the Confederate move, the Union move, which wouldn't take place until turn 3, the Union fire, and then also the Confederate fire. So that's basically the opening moves for Pickett's charge from White Dog Games. I'm going to continue to play. And when I finish, I'll be back with a after-action report here at Bantam Battles. Until then, take care.